Hello everybody and welcome back to a developer update. We haven't done one of these in God knows how long. It was probably 2 years ago or something. But yeah, so we're going to be going over the developer update. We don't need to go that fast. And essentially just, talk over it and look at the changes and give my, thoughts of every single thing. I will say that I think this is a pretty good balance change overall. I feel like a lot of it from from the get go, TLDR. I feel like solo queue is being helped a lot with this update, which is fucking fantastic. There's some killer changes which are like cool. And essentially there's a bunch of killer perks, and like two of them are really cool, and then the other one's like, yeah, cool. But you're probably not going to massively use them all the time. But let's get into it. So the finishing Mory is finally happening. And essentially what this means is just that, everyone has a Cypress Mory, and when you bring in a Mory, you're basically just getting a blood points. It's probably going to be 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, which, hey, is actually kind of better than bringing if you bring in a, red tier Mory, because I forget the names of things because I'm so smart. But if you bring one of those in, you actually do get, I think it's Ebony Mory. You get probably more blood points than you would by bringing in a singular like Bloody Streamers or Survivor Cake, which is fantastic. Obviously Cypress and all that stuff are kind of just like eh. But this does really just go to show, like, the lower blood point things, the, 50%, 75%, 100% in a category, literally those could just go now. Like, I think what they should just do is just have one where it's, you have one that's, 50%, that's a common. You have the one that's, 100%, and then you have the bloody party streamers. That's it. Just have those three. And then you have, the anniversary ones, and then you have Morys for killers. For survivors, just have it that there's, the same thing, essentially. Make the 25%er a common. The one that gives everyone 25%. Make that a common. The cake, the survivor cake, is a rare or uncommon. And then, yeah, uncommon because it is rares in this game. Card games make my brain hurt when it comes to different tiers and different games. But then essentially what you would want to do is have, the bloody party streamers still be in that green spot. And then, whatever, right? I think the one thing that they should really need to do is start downgrading the amount of things. I feel like map offerings could be lowered, honestly, to just be common or something. Maybe there could be a cool thing about them, but maybe they could just be downgraded, because at this point, the real reason that blood points and all that aren't going as far is because 20 gajillion things are worthless most of the time. However, let's get into the actual perks, which survivor perks, I'm gonna have to have a quick look and make sure. Yep, okay, good. So Power of 2 and Collective Stealth, I do believe they're both on the screen, so we'll talk about them both at the same time. We'll do this, so then that should fix that. Yep. So essentially, these two perks are perks that came out for the Lyra twins. And essentially the way that it works now is that the range is a bit better on both of them. They no longer have a cooldown. They no longer deactivate when a survivor loses a health state. And essentially they now have a new mechanic where the effect will linger when you're out of range, and then, it comes back when you, come back together. So essentially oh, you need to go that way, I need to go this way, you then converge back, and then cool, you have your collective stealth and all your power of 2 again. The better of these two is the Power of 2, I personally believe, because Power of 2 plus Blood Pact is this crazy cool, you just move faster than the killer. It is memey, it is silly, but it is a fun little build that you can run if you have 2 people, and this buff just helps that. These 2 perks aren't going to be perks that are going to actually see a bunch of play, so it's kind of just cool to buff them up and let them be just a funny little thing, especially with the new mode that we're going to be getting, the Chaos Shuffle again at some point. So, you know, you want to have a lot of these mid-tier perks a bit better, so then when you randomly get them in that mode, it's not going to be as painful. We now have Corrective Action and Inner Focus. Corrective Action now applies to survivors just in general who are in 8 meters of you. So this essentially means that someone's doing a heal check, like a skill check, a healing skill check, and they fuck it up, and you're like, God damn it! It's fine, because this now also applies to that. It isn't just on the gen, which, you know, hey, is kind of a good thing. And, you know, prevented skill checks are now great instead of good. There could be some silly, funny ha-has you can do with this. But at the end of the day, like, Corrective Action is just such a perk. I really don't massively think it's too crazy. I think a better way to make this perk is that, maybe there's, like, a thing, but, like, I think it would be cool if the entirety of the perk was about whenever a survivor around you gets a good, like, if you're doing a gen and someone comes onto that gen, any skill check they do that's a good skill check becomes a great skill check. Or something like that. Obviously, maybe then that would be too powerful, and you could, like, do some crazy stats around it. But, like, I do think that something like that would be cooler. But yeah, I guess Hyper Focus would make it way too overpowered. And Inner Focus. I thought that was a Corrective Focus for a second. But Inner Focus is now just way better. This is now a solo queue beast. This is one of the 2 perks, I believe, or maybe 3 perks, that's gonna just make solo queue great again. So essentially, there's no range requirement. That's it. Awesome. That's all we need. So essentially, the way the Inner Focus works now is anytime a survivor's hit, you get to see the killer for 10 seconds. If you're using Eyes of Belmont, it's going to be, I believe, just a classic 12 seconds, which is really good. And then you have Eyes of Belmont, so when you finish a gen, you have a bit of time, and you could run that with Poised, the new Poised. So when you get on a gen, you see the killer's aura. When you finish a gen, you see the killer's aura. Whenever a killer does anything, you see the killer's aura. You get what I mean? But yeah, this is just better. This is just what the perk should be. It's just a lot better for new players as well. The only shame is that it's not on a character that most new players are going to go for. I am going to be making a video talking about what survivors you should be going for, especially with this update in mind. But it's kind of hard anyway, because some people just, they get into a game and they understand kind of like oh, this is how this is meant to work. And then some other people are like, I'm just going to hide in the corner for 5,000 years. So it's kind of rough in that situation. We're Gonna Live Forever is now awesome. I love this change. Personally, I love being the medic of a team. That's one of my more favorite builds. So just having this be, you know, an extra botany knowledge worth of speed is absolutely insane. I believe the heal speed is 24 seconds or something. So this goes from 24 seconds to 12 to like 8. And then if you have a botany knowledge, it goes to 6 seconds. So quite literally, you can heal someone up and heal someone up in like 12 seconds or something. It's crazy. And basically, the endurance effect, so if you don't know the way that this perk used to work, because it used to give you blood points, is you'd get a stack for every single time you know, stunned a survivor, or stunned the killer to drop a survivor, pallet stunned the killer to drop a survivor, took a protection hit for a survivor, or safely unhooked a survivor, and then they made it that you need to turn on this endurance effect by doing one of those things. So now it's just like, okay, cool, you just don't need to do that anymore, which I think is just good. A lot of the time, even though they are fun, perks should not have, like, requirements to use them if they're just basic effects. If it's just like, hey, I'm going to help someone get up off the ground, it shouldn't be like, you're only safe if I do this. It's just like, it's just kind of stupid. This is also great because it now, like, this perk just this perk alone, if this was the way it worked previously, it would have been like, oh yeah, I can, do the silly haha buckle up for the people build, or I could run this and like botany knowledge and like self-care, or, something like that. Or like this with a med kit, and I could just basically insta-heal you anyway, you know what I mean? And there could have been actual, a debate. But now it's kind of just like, if you want to do a healing build, probably just run this, especially with botany knowledge. Poised, as I said previously, so when you start repairing a generator, so the first time you interact with a generator, you see the killer's aura for 6 seconds, and the duration of which where your scratch marks and all of that are hidden is increased to 14 seconds. So, hey, you just get to know immediately, hey, is someone gonna come out from behind a corner and frickin' attack me? No, cool, I'm gonna sit on this gen. And this, alongside Inner Focus, is actually really good because it allows you to just generally keep tabs everywhere around you, what's happening, all that stuff. So I do believe if you are a new player and you really just need to learn, like, okay, where are people at? Poised, like, if you really wanted to go full aura, you could do it, but, like, I do think Poised, Eye of Belmont, and the good old Inner Focus could really be a big help. The next one, which is the most exciting one for a lot of reasons, is Blood Rush. I love this perk. I loved the original version. I thought it was really cool. However, it kind of didn't work with a lot of perks, and it still doesn't. It still doesn't really work with good old Dead Hard. But essentially, the way that it works now is as soon as you are unhooked, you have 60 seconds of being able to activate this perk. So, awesome. It is now an anti-tunnel perk. So, essentially, this deactivates the same way that Decisive Strike works, which is awesome. So essentially, instead of running Decisive Strike, you run this. And because of reasons I'll get to later, the stonks of Dead Hard are way low. Like, I might just actually stop using Dead Hard altogether. So essentially, the way that this works is, executes a powered, conspicuous action, all the basic shit. If the game is over, you don't get shit. However, when the game is actually going, you get all the benefits, it's all good. And if you do get unhooked and then someone does a gen, I don't think... it just deactivates anyway. So you do get screwed there. However, you don't get heal and you don't get broken. It doesn't take away any life either, so... it's just literally, hey, if you have something like Sprint Burst or Lithe or Balanced Landing, that one's a bit harder to use, but if you have any of those perks, you just get off, you can then, like, do whatever, do your exhaustion thing, and if they're still chasing you, you can pop that Blood Rush and go further. The thing that's also great about this as well is it's not like it doubles up your exhaustion timer. So quite literally, if you wanted to, you could just run this with Sprint Burst, and every single time a killer, like, you get unhooked at all, you could, like, especially if you were running, like, I think the best case scenario for this perk is you run Sprint Burst, Will Live Forever, Second Wind, and Blood Rush. So what happens is you unhook someone, you heal them, you go on with your life, you get unhooked, you sprint down the room, you pop Blood Rush, you sprint again, and you guarantee that heal. And it's like, cool, I'll just go sit on a gen. So I do think the Blood Rush is going to be a absolutely perfect perk for actually being a good anti-tunnel perk. It's so interesting, and it's a perk that relies on the creativity of the people building it. Obviously, you can just run something like Sprint Burst, and it's just always going to be good. However, I do think the idea of, like, the ways you can use this is really cool as well. Essentially, what you could do is, let's say you Sprint Burst away from a hook, right? And the killer is like, okay, I'm not going to chase you. But then maybe like 20 seconds later, the killer's like, actually... I've lost everyone else, I can't find anyone, but I hear this gen going, so I'm going to go to this gen, and they go to chase you, and you're like, shit, like, previously you would have been like, shit, but now, before you get on a gen, you can just pop the Blood Rush, sit on the gen, and now you've just recovered from your thing while not having to reap any like repercussions because you didn't use your exhaustion perk. You just get to like bypass the entirety of the downside of an exhaustion perk and not have to worry about it. And this is also great if the killer has something like Fearmonger or Mindbreaker, as it is now. God, I love how that flip-flopped. But if they do have that, you being able to fully remove your 40 seconds or 20 seconds of exhaustion and only be dealt like the 4 seconds, if you're running something like Sprint Burst or Life, is fantastic. It means that literally you just need to have a little bit of foresight. You can get off that gen, have that 4 seconds pass, and hey, if they come up to you, boom. And there's no other perk in the game, not even Vigil, that can help you as much as this perk when it comes to essentially Sprint Burst, Life, those type of things, but just helping you put yourself into power positions immediately, which I think makes this perk just so like this perk is like actually so freaking amazing if you're not using Dead Hard. And I do think that that's like this perk alone is like kind of half the reason why it's like maybe don't run Dead Hard. You can run this Sprint Burst. You can run like so many things, and you can just make this work so well. Life might be a better option, but it's just up to you. Quick Gambit. This is another perk that's going to be absolutely fantastic for solo queue players. When you are chased, you see the auras of all other survivors. Don't go to them. And Quick Gambit now has a 60-second cooldown upon losing a health state, meaning that once you've activated this perk by being chased, you don't want to get hit. It's a decision now. It's a Gambit. But now the repair speed bonus is lowered to 5%, which is fine. However, there's no limited range, so anytime you're getting chased, as long as you don't take a health state, gens get done quicker. So this is literally perfect for solo queue. This is literally made for solo queue. You're new to the game, you buy Vittorio, you wanna fuck them, you play this perk, and you're just like, cool, I see where people are, I'm gonna play not around them. And then when I'm getting chased, and hopefully not getting hit, they get to all do gens faster, which means hopefully by the time I get downed, they finish their gens and are then able to help me. So it's a give and take, and it's a Gambit, and it's a good, and it's quick. It does everything that this perk should have done from the very beginning. Oh, how we will miss you. Distortion's now shit. I will say that the new Predator does get countered by Distortion, so cool. And Distortion now has a new function. Cool. I kind of just miss it. I might still use it, but like it's still really sad. Like I know that there's a lot of people who are just like, oh, I'm going to now not be able to be seen, and I'm just going to scurry around and wait for the hatch. Hee. But there's also just a lot of like, oh, this killer is using a lot of aura reading. It's really useful to not have to deal with that bullshit right now. And I feel like Distortion had the effect of like, there was perks that you read auras that read like more than one aura, where it could be like, oh, you have Distortion, but the person you're healing doesn't have Distortion. And there's a lot of things like that where it's like, it didn't matter if you had Distortion because, oh, like, context clues. So I guess the main thing about Distortion here is that it's still it's emphasizing the strength of Distortion, which is that when they really need to find you, you're way harder to see and find. And when you don't need to be seen, it doesn't matter. I don't remember, but I think when Distortion triggers, you lose your scratch marks as well. So that just means that Distortion is legitimately now just a good chase perk. You can run this, and you can run it maybe with Quick and Quiet. You can quick vault something. Oh, hey, they have I'm All Ears. Now that doesn't trigger, or you can run it without it. And now it's like you have like a mini version of that other perk, right? Can't remember what the hell it's called. Dance With Me. So, this is a much better direction for this perk. It's just sad because, But I mean, like, this is still like extremely fair. It's still extremely good. I think that this perk is just going to be used by the more like better people now. It's just not going to be run by like annoying, creatures of the night who just scurry around, as I said, little mice and such. Lucky Star is now worse. Nah, it's fine. It like the only problem with it is the entire thing with Lucky Star. I think if it was 20 seconds, and then it kept this, it would be better. The thing about the point of this perk though, is Lucky Star is meant to just be there for perks that use the locker for an amount of time, such as like, repairing your toolbox or healing a health state after you break a totem, or I guess maybe head on. So like it's not really massively. I guess with head on, this is a great change. You can head on Lucky Star now. So, but you'd already like probably be running like the flashbang build if you're doing head on, and you can run so many different things to make flashbangs more annoying, such as Champion of Light, which quite literally is just better than Lucky Star. You head on someone, you drop a flashbang, and then boom, you are now like 20% slower for 5 seconds. I'm gonna be the fuck out of there. But yeah, overall, I think the main winners of this one is Distortion's still great, Quick Gambit is a great solo queue perk, Blood Rush is now easily like an A tier perk, at least. Poised is a great, just simple perk to slap on. We're Gonna Live Forever is great for healing builds, Inner Focus is just great for solo queue, Corrective Action is okay, and the teamwork perks are kind of just, yep, those are teamwork perks. So now let's get into the killer perks, and the number one is Genetic Limits, also known as Fuck Dead Hard. This perk literally just gives everyone the effect of Deathslinger and just says fuck you, Dead Hard. That's it, that's the entire perk. It might also do Overcome as well, and also anything that isn't Sprint Burst, as long as you hit them before they do the action that they need to do, this just does count. Also, this is just when they lose their health state, so you can use a lot of different things to get this to go off, which is actually kind of crazy. Obviously, you could use something like Pinhead. You can Pinhead, hit them with your chain that has the Eerie Engineer's Fang, and then they're stuck there for a little bit, and then you hit them, and they couldn't really do anything, you know what I mean? As well, you could also do that with the Pallet Hex, and you could actually be so mean. But like just in general, like if they lose a health state, they suffer exhaustion. Great. I think this just is like so much better than it used to be. Like literally the fact that it used to just be like, oh, if they're healing in your terror radius, they get like exhausted. Who cares? But this is just way cooler. I like this a lot more. It's also just one of those things where 8 seconds is just enough time where if you're good enough in chase, you could actually get that 8 seconds and run your Dead Hard. But it's a skill-based thing. So I think a lot of people are just not going to use Dead Hard because that's already a more skill-intensive perk than a lot of the other exhaustion perks. Not all of them. I do think that there's a few perks such as Sprint Burst in general, the way you have to manage it is really skill-intensive. And Balanced Landing has a lot of, you have to be creative of how you use it. But I think overall, this just punishes. This is just like a perk where it's like, if you want to turn off your brain, here you go. And I think that's a great idea to give killers, because a lot of the time, you need to be able to do things, and you need to be able to do them, like, quick. Because at this point, like, basically adding perks that make chases harder for survivors in a more interesting way, where there's way more risk-reward, is actually a cool thing. It basically just means, hey, if you're playing as Survivor, you don't have like a bunch of silly things. It also means as well that if someone blood rushes, Genetic Limits is the counter to that. So if you really need to tunnel the fuck out of somebody, run this perk. Leverage. You now are just, we will not make this. Instead of we'll make it. You just halve the healing speed. I do believe this is like a chlorophobia effect, so no matter how fast you do your healing, it will then be halved. So this is just good. It does get countered by a bunch of different perks, though. Obviously, we'll make it being one of them. It just will makes this just normal, and stuff like that. But hey, like it's just decent. It's just a basic perk, and it's kind of just like Sloppy Butcher, you know. In a way, it's Sloppy Butcher. So like if you want that sloppy effect, and you don't, and like sometimes you don't have a killer that like has the ability to actually use this too much. So like if you're playing Bubba, for instance, you're not going to be using your M1 to get Sloppy Butcher. You could also run this with Sloppy Butcher or anything that adds Mangled and just be an absolute like cunt. But yeah, I think overall like Leverage is a good perk. Like it's not crazy. It's not like oh man, you're gonna run Leverage all the time. But like if you get this perk randomly, you're gonna be like, oh cool. And I think that's where a lot of perks, especially for killer, should be. THak is now the inverse Distortion. Essentially, you start with 3 tokens, like old Distortion, and you gain a token whenever you hook a survivor. I think this line, you start with 3 tokens, gain 1 token upon hooking a survivor, should honestly be the basis of like 50,000 fucking perks in this game for killer. Like Pop Goes the Weasel, maybe even. Like maybe it's like you start with 3 tokens, gain 1 token upon hooking a survivor for the first time, and then you make it like just 20% total progress. So when breaking a pallet or breakable wall, consume 1 token, cause survivors to scream. The only problem with this is just the fact that, you know, who cares? It's the magical who cares effect. If you're breaking down something, unless it's on Dead Dog, I guess, you're just not gonna care. Like, if you're on Midwich, you hear them scream on the floor above you, you're like, cool, I guess. Like, obviously there's gonna be killers like Freddy, Sadako, things like that, where it's like, ah, cool, teleport. But there's just so many characters that are like, if I even bother going up there, I'm just wasting time. So THak is just one of those things where it's like, cool. But that's kind of it. So it's nice just to make this more consistent and just better in general. Machine learning. Just whatever you kick becomes compromised, instead of having to kick a generator, then compromise a gen by kicking it. This just makes sense. Machine learning, I think it's a great perk. I think it's really cool and fun. Machine learning, you can run this with a perk like Oppression to try to get a little bit more value. But essentially the way that this perk works is you want to find where people are immediately, kick the gen they're on, play someone like that has an insta-down like Bubba or something, and then they activate the gen, and now you win the game. That is the point of machine learning, and I think this just makes it way more simple, because now you don't have to find 2 gens. Literally, find the gen they're working on, kick it, that's it. Deathbound is now interesting. There is no longer a distance requirement to activate, and there is no longer a duration. Instead, it deactivates when the healer is hooked. So essentially, this the way that this perk, if you don't know, is once a survivor that was away from you, now no longer the case, heals. I think both of them, or like the healee, the one who's doing the healing, is oblivious. I think Deathbound, unironically, is now a decent perk. I think I'll run this on a lot of different killers. Maybe not stealth killers, maybe stealth killers. It depends, like, because I play Pig. So, as long as you're not using your stealth, you're good. This just means, like, if you're playing a killer that is a stealth killer, you don't have to... Basically, this is just a Pig perk now. Like, unironically, this is just a Pig perk. Like, cool, you don't need to waste your time being in a fucking crouch state that removes your speed to 0. You still get all the benefits of, hey, I'm a stealth killer. If you don't do shit, I'm gonna kill you. And it's just great. It just works on anyone who has an insta-down, ranged killers especially, who isn't Huntress or Trickster or Sadako or Freddy, because they all have lullabies, so it doesn't fucking matter. Or Nemesis, because fucking hell, he is loud as fuck. But just anyone in general who doesn't have really loud sounds, so those 4 basically, you're basically just going to be able to make great use of this, because healing is just such a universal tool. Obviously, you're not going to run this with like Plague, you're probably not going to run this on like Legion. There's a lot of characters who you're just not going to run this on, but the characters that you do want to run this on, I think this is going to be a fantastic pick. Pickzan Tactics. So now whenever you're in a 16 meter area around the survivor, and they're within 6 meters of a dropped pallet, you see their aura for 10 seconds. I don't understand if this is just their aura is permanently revealed and then for 10 seconds, or if it's just literally the one time 10 seconds. I'm thinking it's the one time 10 seconds. It's great because you have the information they don't. I kind of wish that this was just both effects, kind of. It was generally kind of nice sometimes. Just hadn't, like, you don't need to think. You're just like, oh, the pallet's over there, they're going to the pallet. Cool, I'm going to do this thing. But at the same time, it's like, hey, you have to pay a little bit of attention. So this is more of a just have a brain perk, which I think is just fine. I think that's exactly how I just feel about it. Like, yeah, this is just fine. Dead Man's Switch. So now the first time a survivor stops repairing a generator, the perk activates, and the perk now activates for 50 seconds instead of 30 seconds. This essentially brings it close to what it originally was when it was an obsession perk. I think this is fine. The main idea about Dead Man's Switch and it being annoying is the fact that it's only annoying when you're trying to do a gen and it happens twice. The main thing is that if you have Deadlock and Dead Man's Switch, it's still going to happen twice. I do think, though, you could run something like Dead Man's Switch, Grim Embrace. I've talked about this a little bit, I do believe, and I do need to make a video on it. So, hey, if you're a content creator and you're watching this video, please don't steal that. I know you're going to, but please don't. Nah, it's fine, you can have it. But yeah, so the main idea of this build, so if you're making this video, here's the TLDR for you. Dead Man's Switch activates the first time or whenever someone gets off of a gen. Grim Embrace forces them to get off a gen. These two perks stack and create a 50-second barrier now instead of a 12-second one. So essentially what happens now is just, hey, you know how you were about to get off that gen for 12 seconds? It's now 50. Have fun. The only problem with this perk now is that if you do get multiple procs at the same time, it basically means that you have... it's basically like if you run Dead Man's Switch with Grim Embrace now, you just have 2 Grim Embraces. One that happens at the start of the game, and one that happens near the mid of the game. Which I think is actually really freaking good. So I do think that Dead Man's Switch plus Grim Embrace is probably going to be an absolutely terrific build option for an alternative way of slowdown. Now then, Blood Echo. So it doesn't have a cooldown anymore. For some reason it had like a weird 30 second or so cooldown. And the duration is now 30 seconds. If you don't know, this makes it so whenever you hook someone, everyone who's injured gets hemorrhage and exhaustion, I believe. Just those two. It might be a third as well. But the main point of this one is if you're playing a killer that has like a lot of speed or something, like a hillbilly or such, you down someone, you put them on the hook, you're like, cool, they're all now exhausted, I'm gonna go for the crazy chases, and you go for the crazy chases and you get the value. This just makes that easier. And now that it doesn't have a cooldown, it just feels like a good perk. Crowd Control. This is the vaulting one. So essentially the last 5 vaults that they vault through are now blocked. This is interesting because it means that on maps like the Doctor's map, this is not going to really do much. But on very, very particular maps, this could be like crazy. If you're playing on a map where it doesn't have too many good vaults, this perk is actually crazy because it means that the only vaults people are going to use are the good vaults, and now they're blocked until they find this. So if you're playing on maybe like a Haddonfield, maybe, or more so in my opinion, Garden of Joy with that house, there's like 2 vault locations that are fairly annoying. And there's like, yeah, there are other ones, like THak as well. But like those ones are the most predominantly annoying ones. So if you just get rid of those, it's just like, cool. But at the end of the day, if they are a good team, they can just all like vault shift. different areas of the map just to make your chase easier. So there is that. Predator, not the character, sadly. Rework. Whenever a survivor escapes a chase, reveal the aura for 6 seconds. Distortion, remember. This perk then goes on a 40-second cooldown, so you get exhausted for 40 seconds, essentially. So, essentially, Predator is just... if they get out of your sight, and you are like, damn, but then you're like, maybe? Predator's the perk for you. Predator, I think, is now a fantastic beginner perk. This is literally one of the best changes they could make ever to a starting killer perk. The fact that now people, when they start the game, can go play Wraith, have like Sloppy Butcher, Predator. It's such a bad name for a perk. And stuff like that, you know, like you can just have perks now at the start of the game that actually do shit. That actually help you. Like, this perk is just going to help so many baby killers learn how to properly play the game and not get sandbagged as much. The main problem with a lot of killers is that maybe they'll play Wraith or something, right, or they'll play Trapper, and they just don't know how to do Chase, and when Chase ends poorly for them, it just feels so shit. This allows them to have that moment of, aha, and allows them, maybe if they're playing Huntress even, like, oh damn, I lost them, no way, and then you hit that shot, and then you feel fucking great, and then you buy all the fucking DLC. And that's what the company wants at the end of the day. So making it that perks that are for killers that are given to you at the very start of the game for free, giving them effects that would really fucking help people who are new at the game, is just, why did you not do this earlier? The only problem is that I think that they should just do is I think every single killer at the start of the game, whenever you buy a new game, every single base killer and survivor should be P1 or P3. The reason is because the perks that they start with are so influential to how you'll play starting that you just need them. I do think that perks like Predator, perks like Nurse's Calling, for instance. I think Huntress is also one, but Huntress's perks are terrible. But the fact that you can start a game playing as Huntress, have Nurse's Calling and Predator, maybe like, I don't know, Brutal Strength if you really want to go that route, it would just help so much more new players get into the game. But yeah. That is all for the perk updates. Let's get into the killer updates. Skull Merchant, they didn't delete her yet, so that's a problem. Unlike Singularity, I hate both Singularity and Skull Merchant going against them. Singularity, I respect though, because one, it's actually a much more thought-provoking killer, and two, they're actually really fucking fun to play. So I can understand, oh, like, it's really fun to play them. You have to put your cameras in places, then you scan through the cameras, like, aha, there you are, you fucker, and then you go to them, and you're like, damn, and then you go through the chases, and you mid-chase teleport, and then you like, get the pallet bonked on you, and you're like, yeah, it doesn't even matter, and then you continue. Like, there's a lot of fucking fun and outplay potential. With Skull Merchant, it's just, I'm gonna put my style thing over here, and now you know, no, do Gen bad, and then that's the entire character. They tried to change it from that, but now everyone still just does it like that, because who cares? I honestly just think that there should just be a thing where it's like, if you're near a gen, you can't place them down, because stop trying to be a douchebag. I don't like it when killers fall. Like, I play both killer and survivor, and I'll tell you what. I hate killers that... It's the reason why I also hate Singularity to a degree. I never do this when I play Singularity, but I fucking hate it when people just, like... It's like like on Hawkins, for example, the gen that's on the walkway, every single Singularity's first job on that map is to fucking put a thing there. So then anytime anyone does that gen, you just don't have any fun. Killers whose entire idea is just, oh, I'm gonna make sure that gen doesn't get done and not do anything about it, but also do that while I'm doing something else, is just the most fucking annoying shit in the game. Singularity, Knight, and Skull Merchant all do this, but Knight 1 is fucking sick looking. He's a knight. He has a sword. That's cool. And also, he's just way more interesting to me. Like, you can actually use his power in chase a lot more. It's a lot more like thought-provoking. You can use it just to break pallets so that you can continue chases. There's so much more stimulation to the brain when you're playing Knight, and Singularity, as I previously mentioned. Because Singularity, you can do all the mid-chase stuff, you can, like, think about the positioning of your cameras, you can delete your cameras, you can, like, there's so many things you can do with Singularity. And it really makes you think like Cypher from Valorant, even though I hate that game. I love characters whose gimmicks are like you shoot a camera, because it makes you really think about the geometry of the entire map. Because like, okay, cool, well if this is that and then this is that, like, oh, RPD, I can shoot my camera really high up top, so then I get this crazy good aerial view and I capture the entire middle of the map with one camera. That's really good. Like, there's a lot of cool shit like that. Skull Merchant is just, hey, I put this thing down. Even if you interact with it, it doesn't just go away. It kind of just stops working for a little bit. The thing that they need to do for Skull Merchant is if you hack one of her drones, it just destroys the drone. But silently. So the Skull Merchant player doesn't know it's been hacked until maybe 20-30 seconds later. And then make it that her, like, things are better in chase or something, because it's just annoying that every single time you go against Skull Merchant, it's always the same thing of just, oh, Jen, me put thing down, and it's like, oh, cool, great. And when you play as the Skull Merchant as well, like, when I play them, which is very rare because I don't enjoy them, it's like, okay, cool, I put them at a loop, and now I play that loop, but then it's still annoying because the power's not good enough at a loop to do anything. The only time you get value from this perk is when someone's sitting down and doesn't care about the mechanic that the kill is based around. It's so dumb. But yeah, so essentially you can now see the scan lines. They're always active. And they only have one scan line, so you don't need to worry about, oh, when I go up to them, I have to be in a very particular way, and I have to move around them in a bit of like a, if you can see my mouse, a bit of a this way of an arc, a bit of a spiraling arc, because if you go straight, the lines are like this, and then they go like do 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 do, and it's like and like, the middle circle's there. I know that's stupid, but I don't have MS Paint right now. So like, yeah, like Skull Merchant's just astronomically annoying as a killer. I don't like their design at all. They could be made into I think, honestly, the coolest part about Skull Merchant is the fact that they have a tracking device. Unironically, that is the coolest fucking thing. I think, literally, if the scanning was, like, the main part of her power, this killer would be way more interesting to play as and play against. The fact that you can have a killer who literally can pull up a device to kind of like blip, 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 find where people are is so fucking cool. It is so astronomically sad that the killer that has something as cool as a fucking tracking device in which she can stalk the fuck out of you and make sure you die is boring as hell. How the fuck do you manage that? But yeah, Skull Merchant, I really don't care unless you fully rework her. Billy is now just generally a bit weaker, so you don't get absolutely fucking destroyed. I used to play Hillbilly. I still can't play Hillbilly now because the overdrive speed boost turn flick thing that you get is so overdramatic that, like, I don't play, my mouse isn't just like this, my mouse is kind of like this when I'm playing casually, so those tiny little movements make those flicks, like, absolutely insane, and then I, like, just can't do anything, and I'm like, oh, well, fuck me, I guess. But yeah, overall, like, good changes to Billy, I've heard from other people. Twins, that's a character. When Victor's crushed, the cooldown is 20 seconds instead of 15. Cool. This just means that there's more cooldown time between it when you crush a Victor, meaning that there's more reason to crush a Victor. They already changed that as well with the rework, so you already want to crush a Victor, so this just means that Victor's just less annoying throughout the game. Increase the cooldown after Victor downs a survivor by 0.5 seconds. This is just to mean that, for 0.5 seconds, there's like more time, I think, to punt it. Because punt the baby is a meme. But, I do believe that's what that means. So when a survivor does get downed, if there is another person, they do have a bit more time to actually get that kick interaction in there. Which is nice, but at the end of the day, Twins is just kind of annoying. They're not, like, as annoying as Skull Merchant, but, like, you know, apparently they're harassing people. You know, the top 1% of Twins mains, also known as the 50% of Twins mains, are doing too good, and they need to be changed. The Unknown. They've basically made it so then you can now what is it? You can now edge your copies better. Because the problem is when you were trying to make a hallucination, you had to edge your power, and it made it look like you were going to shoot, which made people like skitter, and that would slow them down. And then inadvertently, you would put a unknown hallucination in a really good spot, and coincidentally, also down the survivor with an M1. So they now made it so then the teleport recovery speed is increased. But when you are charging your power, it is now decreased sooner to do that. I thought that both of these were tied to the first one, which is not what it is. But yeah, so that's really cool. Blurry Photo and Vanishing Box add-ons have now been kind of put into the main kit of the Unknown, just to make him less add-on reliant. This is always great to see. Anytime a killer, like Wraith, old Wraith for instance, anytime a killer's kind of forced to run a few add-ons just to be viable, make those add-ons base kit. But yeah, so that's just good to see. And visual audio feedback are improved generally when using UVX. Obviously, this is just going to be a thing that, you know, people who play Unknown regularly will feel, and maybe people who didn't like them originally will be able to play now and be like, ah, cool, I get this a lot better now. But yeah, that is all. If you want to read the little dev notes, you can. But that is all of this patch, this PTB that's going to be happening. I believe maybe in 2 weeks' time. This is going to be before the new tome comes out. But just to TLDR, my thoughts and everything, finishing Mory is great and makes blood points better for killer. Teamwork perks are now a thing, I guess. Corrective action is still correctively not going to be used. Inner focus, quick gambit, and good old poised are now absolutely fantastic solo queue perks. We're Gonna Live Forever is now a fantastic anti-slugging perk, which it already was. Blood Rush is now the new decisive strike. Distortion is now an anti-chase perk. Lucky Star is now just eh. Genetic Limits is now the anti-dead hard perk. Leverage is now anti-will make it. THak is just whack, I guess. Machine Learning is now an actually decent viable perk. Deathbound is now great on making pressure on survivors. Pickzan Tactics is now just you get to know the mind games around pellets. Deadman Switch is now great with Grim Embrace, but only activates once. Blood Echo is now just you whenever you hook someone, which is great. Hex Crowd Control is now a very interesting map-dependent hex perk. Predator is absolutely fantastic for new players because it allows them to, you know, find survivors after a failed chase. Skull Merchant still has not been removed from this game. Hillbilly has been slightly de-escalated from the crazy power trip they were having. Twins is now a little bit weaker for the 3 people who play them. Unknown feels better to play. I hope you have all had an absolutely wonderful time hearing me rant about these perks for way too long, and I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!